At some point, you have to be honest about what your effort is actually buying you, not what you were promised it would buy, not what it bought for someone else decades ago, but what it's buying you now, in the system you're living in today. Because effort that doesn't change your position isn't progress, it's maintenance. And maintenance can consume an entire life if you let it. The hardest realization for many people is that the system doesn't owe them a return on their hard work. That idea feels harsh, even unfair. But once you accept it, something shifts. You stop waiting for recognition. You stop assuming loyalty will be rewarded. You stop believing that suffering now guarantees freedom later. And in that clarity, you regain something you didn't realize you lost: agency. Working hard is not a plan, it's an input. Without leverage, it produces diminishing returns. The longer you rely on it as your primary financial strategy, the more exposed you become. Your body ages, your energy declines, your tolerance for stress drops. And yet, the demands don't ease. If your financial survival depends on your ability to keep pushing, then your life is more fragile than it appears. This is why real financial security feels so rare. It's not because people don't try. It's because most people are trying in ways that don't scale. They're climbing ladders that lean against walls they didn't choose. They're competing in systems where the rules quietly favor ownership over effort, control over compliance, and leverage over loyalty. Recognizing this isn't about resentment. It's about realism. You can respect hard work and still admit that it's a weak strategy on its own. You can be proud of your effort without letting it blind you. And you can honor the sacrifices you've made while questioning whether continuing in the same direction makes sense. The goal isn't to stop working. The goal is to stop confusing work with progress. Progress is measured by how much control you have over your time, your decisions, and your future. If you're earning more but feel more trapped, that's not advancement. If you're busier but more anxious, that's not growth. Those are signals, not failures. Real change usually starts quietly. It starts when you stop asking how to work harder and start asking how to work differently. When you pay attention to where your effort creates leverage versus where it just creates output. When you notice which activities move you forward and which ones simply keep the lights on. Those distinctions matter more than motivation ever will. This doesn't come with a clean formula. There's no shortcut, no hack, no guarantee. Anyone promising that is selling comfort, not truth. The real shift is internal. It's deciding that your life is worth more than endless exertion. It's allowing yourself to question narratives that no longer fit your reality. It's giving yourself permission to want more than survival, dressed up as success. You don't have to burn everything down to change direction, but you do have to stop worshipping effort as if it's enough. You have to accept that some of the hardest working people in this country are also the most financially vulnerable, and that reality isn't a moral failure, it's a structural one. If this video made you feel uneasy, that's a good sign. It means you're paying attention. Comfort rarely leads to clarity. Discomfort does. It forces you to confront assumptions you've been carrying without questioning, and once those assumptions are visible, they lose their power over you. You're not lazy for wanting your work to lead somewhere meaningful. You're not entitled for wanting security that doesn't depend on constant strain, and you're not broken for feeling like the old rules don't work anymore. They don't. Not the way you were taught. Working hard isn't wrong, but relying on it as your financial strategy is. The sooner you see that distinction, the sooner you can start building a life where effort supports freedom instead of consuming it. A life where your energy creates options, not obligations. And that shift, however slowly it happens, is where real financial progress actually begins. If you work hard, this video is going to bother you. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you were told something that was never fully true. From the moment you were young, you were taught that effort equals progress, that if you show up, stay consistent, and give your best, the system will eventually reward you, and for a long time you believed it. Maybe you still do. That belief shaped your decisions, your tolerance for stress, and the way you measure your own worth. But here's the uncomfortable reality. In America, working hard is often a terrible financial strategy, not morally, not ethically, structurally. Hard work is respected. It's praised, it's admired, but that doesn't mean it's rewarded in the way people expect. The system doesn't pay for effort, it pays for leverage, it pays for position, it pays for ownership and control. And when people confuse effort with strategy, they end up exhausted, loyal, and financially stuck. Not because they didn't try hard enough, but because they tried hard in a game where effort alone doesn't move the needle. Most people don't work hard to get rich. They work hard to feel safe. They want stability, predictability, a sense that if they do their part, things won't fall apart. That's not greed. That's survival, and the system knows this. It's built to absorb hardworking people into roles that require constant output but offer limited upside. The harder you work inside those roles, the more valuable you become to the system, and the harder it becomes for you to leave. Here's the part nobody likes to hear. Hard work often locks you into low-leverage positions. If your value comes from showing up, doing tasks, and producing effort, your income is capped by time and energy. There are only so many hours in a day. There's only so much stress a body can carry. When your strategy depends on effort, the only way to earn more is to give more of yourself, and that trade has a ceiling. This is why so many hardworking Americans feel like they're running faster but not getting ahead. They take on more responsibility. They stay late. They become dependable. They become the person who holds things together, and that reliability gets rewarded with more work, not more freedom, more expectations, not more control. The system doesn't punish hard workers, it uses them. Another uncomfortable truth is that hard work often distracts people from asking better questions. When you're exhausted, you don't have energy to think strategically. You don't step back and examine the rules of the game you're playing. You're too busy surviving the week. So effort becomes a shield. As long as you're working hard, you can tell yourself you're doing everything right. That belief is comforting, but it can also be limiting. In America, the narrative around hard work is deeply emotional. It's tied to identity, dignity, and self. Questioning it feels almost offensive, like you're disrespecting people who struggle. But acknowledging that hard work is a poor financial strategy doesn't mean effort is worthless. It means effort without leverage is fragile. It means effort without ownership keeps you dependent. It means effort without control leaves you exposed. Think about how rewards actually scale in this system. The people who gain the most aren't necessarily the ones who work the hardest. They're the ones whose decisions affect many people at once. They own systems. They control processes. They benefit when others work hard. That's not a moral judgment. It's an observation, and once you see it, it's hard to unsee. What makes this especially painful is that many people double down on hard work when things aren't improving. They assume the solution is more discipline, more hustle, more sacrifice. They cut rest, they cut joy, they delay life, and when the results don't change, they internalize the failure. They think they're not good enough. They blame themselves for outcomes that were structurally unlikely from the start. This is where the emotional damage happens. People start measuring their worth by their exhaustion. They wear burnout like a badge of honor. They confuse suffering with progress, and the system benefits from that confusion because it keeps people productive, compliant, and quiet. No one stops to say, maybe this strategy doesn't work, because admitting that would force a much harder conversation about how money actually moves. The most dangerous part of the hard work myth is that it sounds fair. It feels just. It promises that effort will be rewarded eventually, and when reality doesn't match the promise, people assume the delay is temporary. They tell themselves to just keep going. That's how years pass. That's how lives get spent chasing a payoff that was never guaranteed. This video isn't telling you to stop working hard. It's asking you to stop believing that hard work alone will change your financial trajectory. Because if effort were enough, the hardest working people in America would be the most financially secure. And they're not. They're often the most tired, the most anxious, and the most afraid to slow down. And once you see that, the question changes. It's no longer how can I work harder? It becomes, why am I working so hard for so little control? That question is uncomfortable. But it's also the beginning of clarity. One of the reasons hard work is such an effective trap is that it feels virtuous. When you're working hard, you feel justified. You feel like you've earned the right to rest someday. You feel protected from criticism, both from others and from yourself. That moral shield makes it difficult to question whether your effort is actually moving you forward or just keeping you busy. As long as you're exhausted, it's easy to believe you're progressing, even when nothing is changing. The system reinforces this belief by constantly celebrating effort. Hustle culture, productivity metrics, performance reviews, and grind narratives all focus on output, not outcomes. They measure how much you do, not how much control you gain. And when control isn't part of the equation, people end up optimizing the wrong thing. They optimize for approval, stability, and short-term rewards, while their long-term financial position remains fragile. Another problem with hard work as a strategy is that it encourages people to accept bad trades. Trading time for money seems reasonable at first. You show up, you get paid. Simple. But over time, the imbalance becomes clear. Time is finite. Energy declines. Life happens. And yet the demand for output doesn't stop. When your financial plan depends on your continuous presence, any disruption becomes a threat. Illness, family needs, burnout, even opportunities that require stepping back all start to feel dangerous. This is why so many people feel anxious even when they're employed. Their income exists, but it feels conditional. One mistake, one downturn, one change in management, and everything could shift. That constant underlying uncertainty erodes peace of mind. And the harder you work, the more you have to lose. The system quietly transfers risk downward onto the individuals whose only leverage is their labor. Hard work also distorts how people think about fairness. When someone who works less earns more, it feels unjust. That emotional reaction keeps people locked into a mindset where effort should be the primary measure of value. But the market doesn't operate on moral logic. It operates on incentives. It rewards scarcity, scale, and control. When people refuse to acknowledge that, they end up frustrated, resentful, or confused about why things don't add up. There's also a psychological comfort in being needed. Hard workers often become indispensable. They solve problems. They prevent things from breaking. They carry extra weight. That makes them valuable, but it also makes them replaceable only at a high cost to themselves. The more indispensable you are in a role that doesn't scale, the harder it is to step away. Your importance traps you. You'd become too useful to be free. Another consequence of relying on hard work is that it delays financial awareness. People assume they'll think strategically later, once things calm down, once they get the next raise, once life stabilizes. But life rarely slows down on its own. The demands increase, responsibilities pile up, and by the time someone realizes they've been running in place, the cost of changing direction feels overwhelming. That's not because they waited too long. It's because the system rewards constant engagement and punishes reflection. Hard work also narrows imagination. When you're focused on surviving the week, you don't think about structural change. You don't consider alternative paths. You dismiss ideas that don't fit neatly into your schedule. Even reasonable opportunities feel unrealistic because they require time, uncertainty, or learning. Effort becomes a cage, not because it's bad, but because it consumes all available capacity. This is where many people internalize guilt. They sense that something is off, but instead of questioning the strategy, they question themselves. They assume they're not disciplined enough, not ambitious enough, not smart enough. That self-criticism keeps them compliant. It keeps them pushing harder rather than stepping back. And the system benefits from that, because self-blame is quieter than systemic critique. It's also worth acknowledging how fear reinforces this cycle. Fear of falling behind, fear of being seen as lazy, fear of losing what you've built. Hard work feels like protection against those fears. As long as you're trying, you feel morally safe. But safety rooted in constant effort is fragile. It requires you to never slow down, and eventually that demand takes a toll. Another rarely discussed effect is how hard work shapes identity. People start to see themselves as workers first, humans second. Rest feels undeserved. Saying no feels irresponsible. Time off feels like risk. When identity becomes tied to productivity, stepping outside the system feels like stepping into nothingness. That fear keeps people locked in patterns that no longer serve them. The hardest part is realizing that none of this is accidental. The system doesn't discourage hard work, it depends on it. But it depends on people confusing effort with advancement. As long as they do, they'll keep feeding a structure that offers stability at the cost of autonomy. And because that trade is gradual, it rarely triggers resistance. This doesn't mean effort has no place. It means effort must be paired with strategy, leverage, and awareness. Without those, hard work becomes a loop, not a ladder. And the longer you stay in that loop, the harder it is to imagine anything else.